Hi, everyone. This is Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I'm very excited tonight to bring you David Adair. He's going to be speaking next week at the UFOCON conference, and this is kind of a preliminary update on what he's been doing, and he is a fascinating man. Many people will know his name. Some people may be unfamiliar. And I'm going to read a short bio here while I get him on the screen for you. And hold on there with me for a moment. So basically, David Adair is an internationally recognized leader and expert in the field of technology spin-off applications for industry and commercial use. He's worked as a research scientist in the areas of engineering, jet engine technology, rocket science, and nuclear physics. And at the age of 11, he built his first rocket. And it was quite extraordinary. And I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that. And then at the age of 17, he also built a rocket that was called an electromagnetic fusion containment engine. And it was the first of its kind. And he says it was launched on June 20th, 1971 from White Sands Missile Proving Grounds. And he was awarded the most outstanding in the field of engineering sciences from the United States Air Force. So I've had a long discussion with David. David, you want to say hello to everyone? I'm going to unmute you here, and I hope this is working. Yeah, go right ahead and say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, and it's great to have you on the show. We're going to do a quick test for sound to make sure that everything's okay with the audience. I have a live audience, by the way, so okay. So they can give us feedback in the chat.
Excellent.
And so if we do have any problems with sound, we're going to know because they're going to tell us.
Okay.
But you sound great at my end, and it looks like we're getting some clear feedback on the sound. That's great on your end as well. So I know you've worked in and out of the military and in and out of various aerospace companies over the years, and you've got quite an incredible resume that actually I haven't even grazed the surface of it there. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you started out as a kid, how you came under the notice of, I guess it was Dr. Rudolph, if I recall,
Yeah.
and jump off. We'll jump off from there.
Oh God. So gee whiz, where to start? At the beginning, I was young. I don't know. I just seemed to come in with stuff, I guess. I was a member of the local library. The librarian would watch me, and when I'd come in, I'd go to this certain corner, and in that corner, they were all very heavy sciences and mathematics books. And she knows I'd spend hours over there. And she came over and would talk and ask what I was reading, what I was studying. And she watched me for months, and then she asked me something about quantum differential mechanics and what she'd done. She'd read some of it, and she asked me some questions, and I had answered them. And I was about 7 years old at the time, and she was really, I guess, taken back that I actually knew this stuff. So she asked me, did I have a hard time reading the books, understand them? And I told her I've read the entire corner. And she said, all of them? I said, yeah. So she then started ordering books for me. And this is back there. This is about 1961. So she ordered books for me, and she told me not to tell anybody because limited resources. But she was helping out a lot, and I got books that I'd never had a chance to see. So I read up on all that, and so I was just interested in so many things, but physics was really my favorite. And I started working on rockets, and for some reason I just was interested by all the different things you can learn in rocketry. So I started building rockets, and my rockets were not kits off of a shelf. There were none at the time when I did this. So I had to build everything from scratch, and I didn't want to build solid fuel rockets. They have limited power and range and a lot of other things. And the route to go is liquid fuel. There's only really 2 rocket engines in the world right now, solid propellant and liquid fuel. So I was able to build liquid fuel rockets. Boy, we're going to jump around so much stuff here. How could a kid have an opportunity to build, a liquid fuel rocket is a cryogenic engine. You're dealing with temperatures 320 to 325 degrees below zero. You have to have special containers, special equipment to house that kind of stuff, like liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, liquid hydrogen, all that stuff. So it's cryogenic fuels. Ordinarily, nobody would have access to this stuff, but I'm skipping a big part. My dad was a coal miner in West Virginia. I was born in Welch, West Virginia. There, right next to us was Coalwood, West Virginia. And a guy named Homer Hickman was born there. And they did a movie on him called October Sky. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Oh, I didn't. I love that movie.
Yeah, well, we were born 3 miles from each other. And I was born in Welch, which is where the science fair was, if you remember the movie.
Yes.
So anyway, now he's 11 or 12 years older than me. And so we agree. It must be something in the water back at that place. Both of us did rocketry to get out of there. He got a scholarship and went to academia and private aerospace companies. I ended up into the military, and I went that route. And so we both kind of.
But you were actually sort of kidnapped or something, weren't you, to get into the military?
Yeah. There's so much things that it took. In 1996, it took Art Bell from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning, 7 hours on the radio to get the story out there. Just so much detail, and it flows just like a movie because it's life. I lived this thing. There's a lot of characters involved, a lot of stuff. For instance, and it all layered on top of each other, because once you hear one section, we move to the next, you'll see what all the stuff I did in the first section being applied into the second, and it goes on down the line like that. It's all connected because it's chronological in sequence, like our timeline is, and of life, and just lived it. Back to my dad with, he was a coal miner, but he was super gifted in auto mechanics. So my grandfather, which that movie October Sky, if you remember, there was an old man in a suit standing behind Homer's father, and they referred to him as the mine superintendent. That is my mother's father. That's my grandfather.
Okay.
So I'm that close into the story. So my grandfather didn't want, my mother's father didn't want possibility that his grandkid's father, my dad, would be killed in a mine. So he got a gas station that my dad could take over. And it was a real success from the first day. A lot of customers. Dad could just fix cars and they stayed fixed. But I remember, this is leading up, I'm answering your question of how could I work with cryogenic fluids. So bear with me here and you'll see how this thing flows right into it. So Dad had his garage, and his best customers would come in at 3 or 4 in the morning. And I remember I was just really small, a toddler, and I remember my parents hanging blankets over the windows so you couldn't see the lights on at night in the garage. And the reason why, these cars would come in and they had tanks, 200-gallon tanks in the trunk. It's not gasoline. They're moonshine runners. And these moon runners have to have really highly tuned cars to outrun the revenuers who are looking for garage lights at 3 in the morning. So that's where these cars are getting tuned up. These cars have huge engines, 396 Chrysler Hemi engines. They didn't have the 426 at that time. 392 Hemi engines by DeSoto. And my father tuned them up, and these things could run so fast. And if you didn't know this, the drivers, the moonshine drivers, later got into a business, and most of the NASCAR drivers were these moon runners because they could drive so fast on curvy roads. And that's how NASCAR got started. So anyway, my dad was fixing this. This man came through. His car broke down. Had to change a carburetor. Very complicated. Take a day to do it. It's called a Spicer. Carburetor had the water jacket around it. But anyway, this man said, that's going to take all day. And Dad said, I can do it in an hour. And he said, let's see. And he stood there and watched my dad change this thing in an hour. Really? He said, you always work this fast? And he didn't get the joke when my dad said, yeah, when I see what I'm doing, it's, it's noontime. Anyway, he got done, and the man said, I'm coming from Detroit, and I'm on my way to Florida, and we're going to race down there on the beach at a town called Daytona. And I'd like to hire you as my mechanic. And he sticks out his hand because my name is Lee Petty. Well, he had a son later named Richard Petty. And if you know those names, they are the most decorated NASCAR drivers in history.
Okay. But
so, okay. So,
I guess I'm kind of lost. Okay. So how does this relate to, maybe we could skip ahead a little bit?
Think about it. Those are state-of-the-art NASCAR shops that we're in, my dad's in.
Okay.
A NASA rocket shop and a NASCAR race shop are mirrors of each other. Both shops designed to produce speed. They got the same materials, aircraft aluminum, stainless steel, titanium. They have all the same machines, shears, presses, benders, welders, cutters to shape the rocket and to shape the race car. So I'm inside a NASA rocket shop. Actually, it is the Petty Enterprises. And the reason I got to use it is that I built a 426 Chrysler Hemi engine from the block up, and I'm 12 years old. It went to Grand National. So my dad wanted to tell the world about that, and he said, we can't do that because we got child labor laws, and Bill France over there will hang us from a tree. So the Pettys asked me if they could do something for me. I said, could I have the shops at night? Bang, there it is. That's where I built my first cryogenic rocket.
All right.
Also, they had drag racers. So they had methane, nitro, and liquid fuel on the liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen side. So perfect. And my first rocket left, and it was really fast. It was really quite big, and it burnt an area about the size of a football field. I didn't have to mow grass for it summer. Just burnt the place up. But anyway, I started building rockets and got really proficient, got bigger, faster. And then
okay, but for the purposes of this this interview, and I appreciate what you're saying, it's great. It's a great story, but I want to know how you got linked up with alien technology at a later age. And when I talked to you offline, you actually said that you thought perhaps you had been in touch with this particular ET race who built this technology from an early age. So what I was hoping is that we could talk about, how did that happen? How did you end up in contact with what you think was more or less an alien race? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can go straight into that part of the story, but I'm warning you, credibility goes out the door, in my opinion. That's because
okay,
all the details I give you in the story, and it layers upon itself. When we get to that point, everything makes so much more sense. Otherwise, I've just started out. There's so many critics out there that will say, well, how did that kid get to do that? How could he do this? How could and they're right. You need to address those issues. But it takes time to do that. It's a long story. But we'll jump right in. See, the way I got tangled up with Dr. Arthur Rudolph, that's due to General Curtis LeMay. Well, how'd that happen? Well, back up the story. That was called Congressman Ashbrook. Well, how'd he involved? And see, we skip over all that. We just start talking. It's like Pulp Fiction. It's a broken chronological line, and it just sounds like crap because nobody could, how could this kid do this? But let's just jump. Yeah, what happened was I was taking Area 51 after my rocket landed there, and it was commandeered back at White Sands, New Mexico, because this black DC-9 jet pulled up, and out comes this guy, and his name is Dr. Arthur Rudolph. I'm skipping over so much detail. But anyway, Rudolph, he was a difficult person to deal with.
Okay, well, maybe we could go to where you met von Braun when you were a kid. You were helping NASA out, right? And working around von Braun. And is that how you met Rudolph? Because I was just wondering.
No, that's not how it happened at all.
All right.
No, what happened was, see, I had been working with General Curtis LeMay. Now, if you don't know who he is, look him up in the history book. He's your former chief of the Joint Chiefs. He was designer of the B-52 Stratofortress. He also is the man who founded SAC, Strategic Air Command, our nuclear deterrent forces that fly 24/7. He was also President Kennedy's right-hand man in the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was the guy that had his finger over the button. Very powerful individual. So how does a 15-year-old kid get hooked up with him? See, just credibility just hanging out in the wind there. But it's really quite logical. We lived at that time, we lived in Mount Vernon, Ohio. And my mother was an LPN, licensed practical nurse, and she worked at Martin Memorial Hospital. Well, there's 2 patients there, actually just 1 at that time. And this guy's is about 92 years old, and he's in the coronary care unit. My mother was the technician in charge on the 3rd shift. Well, this guy's name is LeMay, and he's an elderly man, and his son comes to visit him about 3 in the morning, and his son is Curtis LeMay. And my mother is the supervising cardio care technician of LeMay's father. And he has to go through my mother to see his father. And my mother and General LeMay became good friends. And so after many, many months, Curtis LeMay asks my mother about her sons and family. And she just goes to describe me to him. He said he's building these rockets and launching them in cow fields, and there's all this other activity he's got going, and something about fusion containment. So he asked my mother, does he write any notes? And I do. I had a huge pad, 93 pages of it. Anyway, she takes that thing to work while I'm asleep, and she works from 11 to 7. So LeMay looks at it, and then he turns around and asks my mom, you got a copier? And he copies a bunch of pages. Fortunately, he didn't get everything, but he took a few pages. Anyway, when he leaves, he goes to Battelle Memorial in Columbus, Ohio. If you look them up, they're a big think research tank like RAND, some of the others. And he had them look at it, and he thought, is this just scribble or something to it? And they went, where'd you get this? There's some kid out in Cowfield. What's he doing? He goes, he's got some kind of fusion containment thing going on in a rocket engine. So that started the whole ball in a lot of areas. And finally, LeMay came to me and approached me if I wanted to build what I was planning to build, but I just didn't have the capabilities or resources or other supportive things I would need. Anyway, he offered all that to me. And he said, exactly what is it you're building? I said, it's going to be an electromagnetic fusion containment engine, but actually I'm trying to build the layout for a power plant, but the only way I can validate the fields, if they're going to close and hold, will be in a rocket engine. That way I can test it. And that's how the whole thing got started. And
okay, so when you're at the conference, you know, the UFO Congress, right?
Right.
You're going to be sharing the details of what happened when you actually went inside the Area 51 and you climbed into this craft and all the stuff you discovered, right?
Right.
Am I right? Okay.
Yeah.
And people should know also that Mark McCandlish,
right.
saying his name may be wrong, McCandlish is,
that's correct.
Okay. He's going to be also helping you out, and he's a master illustrator, an aerospace designer illustrator. Is that correct?
That is correct. And he is going to be a big help in a lot of areas. I'd known Mark really for a long time, and I never thought about having him join in with the project. Well, I really hadn't planned on doing any of this until a more recent event happened. My wife died and changed my plans. But I talked to Mark about filling in the gaps visually of a lot of things I've done, and I've had got a lot of supporting evidence in my life documentaries that they're doing. They're almost done with. But anyway, he's perfect because of his background in aviation and his skills as an artist. Is amazing. He's up there with Norman Rockwell. And so he'll be able to illustrate some of the things I was running into with this alien power plant. And as a matter of fact, he really turned out one drawing already that really looks great. Took us several different attempts to get it perfected. Same way that a person would describe an attacker and a police sketch artist. It's the same thing. I'm describing what I'm seeing, and Mark is drawing it, and I correct him as he goes, and we end up with pretty much close to what I was actually looking at. And this would be the first time anybody is ever going to see any of this.
Right. So you already have a drawing. Now you're going to show that drawing, I assume, at the conference?
Yes.
All right.
This particular drawing is where I was interacting with the power plant, and there's these pods that you could interact with. And anyway, it shows my hands fitting into the pods and what they look like.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool. And then I'll tell everybody what happened and in detail later, as Mark and I have time to work on it. All the words I'll be talking to you at the conference, behind me will be slide illustrations in great detail of everything I'll be talking about. But at this conference, we're only going to have one, but believe me, I can describe it well enough for you. But anyway,
and you have also you have this, I don't know what you call it, eidetic memory or photographic memory, but you can recall every detail from your past. Isn't that right? And also word for word. Is that correct?
Yeah, and mine functions a little different. I think I'm damaged goods, but it will pick. Sometimes I can get to pick my own, but lots of times it just seems to click in certain areas. Like if I was having a normal conversation with somebody at checkout at the grocery store, well, I'm just like the rest of everybody. I really won't remember that because it's such a common interaction. You're just going through motions. But when things that are really important, something that's really going on that's not normal, it clicks on, and boy, I can remember everything in detail, and it can come in handy.
Okay, so I want to go back to the Rudolph, Dr. Rudolph's interaction with you, because he was a Nazi, and somehow you're saying that Curtis LeMay kind of connected you with Rudolph and brought you to his attention. You ended up going in that underground base, right? And then
Correct.
at a certain point, you really pissed off, Rudolph. Is that correct?
Yeah, I sure did, along with the Air Force personnel.
And that is a movie. That story, which you're going to tell at the conference, in my view, it's a movie.
Yeah, well, I told you that my whole life's been like a movie, and those would all make great scenes, and you'll remember them. And now, see, when that was going on, that's kind of intense. So I remember the dialogue perfectly, just like a VCR camera. And it's interesting things people said back then under the circumstances. But
and when that happened to you, you were 17 years old.
Correct. It took us 26 and a half months from we started in January of 1969, and at June 20th, 1971, we launched. So that's about 26 and a half months, I believe. And
okay, but when did you go into the underground base? Was it after you launched or before? After.
After. We launched out of White Sands, New Mexico, but Rudolph made me reset the coordinates on navigation and put the rocket down exactly where he wanted it, which it did exactly where he wanted it. And he dropped it about 456 miles northwest of White Sands, New Mexico, and it dropped it in an area called Groom Lake, Nevada. And that's the only name I ever knew that place by. I never heard the name Area 51 until just recent years. But back then, in 1971, the place was referred to as Groom Lake. And on the maps I looked, that's all that would say on the map. National Geo Survey maps would say Groom Lake, a dry lake bed. And which I thought that was odd because we were flying a DC-9, and when we get there, it's got rubber tires. It's going to just plow up to its belly in a dry lake bed. And they told me, don't worry about it, get on board. So we get on board, and sure enough, we get there, and they have twin, what will be 10,000-foot runways. They hadn't had them finished yet, but there's a base there with, at that time, 3 hangars and support buildings around it, and water towers, stuff like that. And it looked like a normal Air Force base, except it's just not listed anywhere. It's under the influence or guardianship of Ellis Air Force Base.
So did you ever meet Bob Lazar?
No, I never did. I would like to meet him. I thought he's an interesting person. I'd like to talk to him. I know he's embroiled in a real controversy and all this stuff, and you know, I wasn't there with him, so I can't say, yeah, it's all real, it's true. His element story thing is very interesting. Is it possible? Yeah. Probable? I don't know. It could be. That's the thing. Since I've never met him, and I wasn't there when he was doing things, so I really can't comment much on it. I just speculate like everybody else. The only thing I think Bob Lazar is really guilty of is not being a physics teacher. He's really good at teaching physics. That's because he understands it well. So I don't know I don't think he ever was a teacher, but he sure missed his calling.
Okay, well, that's very cool to hear. You know, what I'd like to do is I'd like to get you and Bob Lazar and John Lear together and have a good old talk about Area 51 in those days.
Yeah. My exposure, you know, was a very short time period. With just one day, I would say 12, 13, maybe 14-hour day, and that was it. That was the first time when I was kidnapped, because they took me out of White Sands where we launched and went to where Bislam landed. That's the name of my rocket. However, a year later, I was in graduation line at high school, and I'm out in the front shaking hands with the parents. And this guy shaking his ice cold hand. I turned to look at him, and two guys in black suits and mirror sunglasses, so help me, and a little black skinny tie. and he hands me this letter, and I open it up, and it says, "Greetings, I'm drafted." Well, so they grab me, and they across the parking lot we go, and in my documentary, my fellow students will tell you, "Yeah, I remember that day. Yeah, where'd you go?" And they threw me in the station wagon, and off we went. And I was still in my cap and gown.
So you were drafted at the age of, what was that, 17 still?
17. I'll turn 18. Let's see. No, that was June. I was 18 and a half years old.
Okay. And but what did you do in the military for all those years? Here you built this incredible engine.
It's well, it's a long story how I get there, and I end up by way of Langley, Virginia, home of the CIA. I go through that place, run into Rudolph. That was a real fun day with him. And then finally, there's a compromise, and I end up ultimately going to, we start off at Great Lakes for basic training. Went through that, sent me down to a jet school, aced that thing. They sent me to a much harder, their most advanced jet schools. Aced that thing, and they said, "Geez, what do you want to do?" I said, "What do you want me to do?" So they sent me to, I said, where are you having your worst problems? And they sent me to Norfolk, and this is 1973. And they are building the F-14, the Tomcat. It's Detroit, there at Norfolk, for the Tomcat. And I didn't know, they just, really didn't know what the specs was on it until I got there. And so they were having problems with everything from thrust to power and stuff. Anyway, I worked on that and solved a couple of things for them. But anyway,
so you did not go to Vietnam directly. You ended up kind of in a circuitous.
Yeah. Well, originally, I think plans were to send me to Vietnam, probably put me on the front line. I'm dead, and I'll be problem solved for whoever's got a problem. But in the meantime, I think there was some definite infighting going on between Rudolph, the CIA, and definitely the Air Force, and then the Navy got involved. So it was probably the Pentagon versus the CIA. And I'm just a little pawn in a tug of war here. And in the meantime, they throw me in jet schools, and the Navy comes back and goes, "This dude's got talent. We might want to look at him." So they gave me another program called NESAP. And NESAP is a program, I think they still have it today. Anyway, it's a place where a way you can go from enlisted ranks to commissioned officers ranks without having to go through college. But you get college along the way. But it's a program where if you got a particularly gifted person in enlisted ranks, you want to advance him. And I'm only 18. I hadn't had time to go to college. It's when I should be going. Instead of being pulled around to all these different needs the military has. So I ended up going to that. But the whole thing was when I was taken from the graduation line, that's the second time they grabbed me. And that time it cost me 11 years. I spent 11 years in the Navy. And
so you disappear for 11 years, but when you had that run-in with Rudolph,
right,
you said back at the CIA,
right.
I don't know whether the story, people know the end of the story because, it has been out there a few times, but in the end, you did something that so angered that man. So how did you get out of it? I mean, how did, without him shooting you, what did you say to him? Did you say, you were a patriot, but you wanted peace, so you didn't want your engine to be used for war? Or what did you say?
Well, we skipped over all that. That will be in the conference.
Right.
it's a confrontation I have with Rudolph over what they brought me there to see and why I was actually brought to Area 51. I wasn't brought there, just to show me something. I was brought there to unravel a problem for them. And the thing was, the very thing I created, my electromagnetic fusion containment engine, which is just a prototype, just a test, but the speed at which it made it from the launch pad to space and then back to Groom Lake, the speed at which it moved is what caused all the problems. It was the fastest thing ever seen, ever. And the reason why, imagine a rocket that's got a sun for an engine, the power of an entire sun, and it could flat move. As a matter of fact, it's so fast, it's really not practically designed where you would launch that thing from Earth. You would have to launch somewhere out in space, preferably L5, where the gravitational tides are equal out there, because when this thing leaves, it's so fast, gravitational forces would kill any organic thing inside. It just turned it into a liquid.
Okay, but you since then, you must have been doing inventions since then, and you told me you'd worked on something even now.
Oh,
You've got
yeah.
a bunch of inventions now, and I'm just wondering, did you use plasma? Because plasma physics, or
Right.
And what about free energy, what they call 0-point free energy?
I still and have always worked within the normal Newtonian world of physics, and so where I'm at in electromagnetic fusion containment, that's just an extension through quantum mechanics, and quantum physics addresses a lot of those issues. So I'm still within the Newtonian laws. Now with free energy and anti-gravity power and all this stuff, no, I've never worked on any of that. I think there's a lot of stuff that we have that's conventional here, hasn't reached its full potential, and so I've kind of concentrated on that.
Well, I mean, I know that you don't necessarily go down the road of wanting to reveal a lot about your contact experiences, but because of the kind of radio show and TV show, whatever you want to call this, that I do, that is sort of the interest of my audience. And
Right.
You just told me off the record, or whatever you want to call it, that you did have contact with, in essence, at least the mind of an alien species, and that you even believe that you're still in contact. So why didn't that group that you're in contact with ever have you, or did they continue to build things that were, super advanced? Is it that you don't remember and you have? Do you think that your mind might have been wiped, like the astronauts might have been, because I know knew the astronauts and all that, but you know what I'm saying?
I have people that would swear that my brain is blank, so maybe I have been wiped. Now there's and how do you know I haven't been working on advanced stuff?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
There's well, that's the reason for last 15 years you haven't seen me on any lecture platforms or anything. I've been really busy in my own lab, and I've done well in life. So I retired when I was 50. That was 13 years ago, and had my own, still do. I have my own lab, my own home on a mountain. So yeah, I've worked on some interesting stuff. Let me ask you a question. Here's a riddle for you, things I have to work on. You got a reactor sitting over there, and you open the door, it's emitting X-rays. So you slide a piece of lead between you and the X-rays, and you stop the X-rays, right?
Right.
Well, then following that matrix of thought, why can't you slide something between you and the earth and separate yourself from gravity? Stop the gravity pull. It's very logical. That's very logical. Follows the matrix.
Well, it's only logical if you think gravity comes from the earth.
Well, the point I'm getting across is it doesn't work that way. And it's extremely difficult. It's why no one's ever been able to figure it out. How do you get anti-gravity? What is it? Because trying to research it, it absolutely goes against everything you understand in physics. So that's why you haven't seen anybody floating around with anti-gravity, at least not in mainstream public. Now, maybe somebody else has developed it, not that I know of, but that's the kind of stuff that I do work in. It's areas that's conventional stuff.
All right. Well, I mean, have you heard of John Hutchinson, for example?
No, I haven't. I got to keep in mind, I don't stay up with a lot of the current stuff or other fields that much. I'm pretty much in my own world here in my lab, but so I focus on certain things. But
I know, but I appreciate what you are saying and what you're talking about. But the audience will have to appreciate that we are not going to talk about the crux of the matter here, because this is something he's reserving for when he talks at the conference, and exactly. we don't want to take away from that. But yeah, I am given some liberty here to at least get you to talk around the subject and also to talk about things that won't necessarily come up at the conference. And right. And I am hoping to do a further interview with you once sort of the cat's out of the bag and you've done your presentation and so on. But I don't believe it makes any sense that the secret space program, even though you did something that really pissed them off, I don't believe they left you alone all these years.
My background is so convoluted, and I'm definitely a blade that cuts both ways. So what that means is that there's things I do I think does bother me. They'll even tell me, and we'll work out a compromise. And the reason I work with them, or they work with me, under the working environment, is because I've done so many things for them, and some things I've done against them, but they still need me. So there's a balance there, and that's why I'm still here.
All right. So you have a security oath. We do want to say this, right?
Right.
We want people to understand that, David Adair, he's not trying to avoid any answers here. He's just letting you know that he has a security oath he's still under in certain circumstances, correct?
Correct. For the United States Navy.
Now, you're talking to Bob Dean on the phone, isn't that right?
Yeah. Oh, it's so pleasant. He calls me about once every other week, and we talk about everything imaginable. He is such a smart guy, and now he had his 88th birthday, I think 9 days ago. So even though he's up there, and unfortunately he's lost his vision, that's why you don't see him out on the lecture circuit much, but
right,
his brain is still sharp as ever.
Absolutely. And, so did he ever talk to you about Nibiru, for example?
Yes. Actually, he talks, I listen.
Okay.
A lot of stuff like that. I have to credit Bob too, because it's really where I've learned a lot of it. But yeah, and what?
But you did work for Homeland Security a few years ago, and you are aware of threatening EMP, that sort of thing?
Right. Boy, now there's a whole subject area. God. The CME, coronal mass ejection, if people don't know what it is, think of it as a bead of sweat off your forehead. And when you reach out with your fingers and you rake it across your forehead and you sling it off, well, that little bead of sweat is what the sun does. It's rotating. There's plasma throws off these beads of plasma, but they're a little bit bigger than a bead of sweat off of you. This thing would be the mass, the ejection mass would probably be about the size and weight of Mount Everest, and it will cross the distance of 93 million miles from here to the sun in about 8 to 12 hours, depending on orbits. So it's moving very fast, not quite light speed, but that's quite a few miles across in just a short time. But fortunately, it's enough time that we can do something about it if we know a CME is coming. Now, most of your listeners are very learned people, really like metaphysical and UFO groups, and you guys are so smart. You're just up on stuff. Of course, most people don't know about what the Carrington event. A British astronomer named Joseph Carrington actually saw a CME with his eye, a flash off the sun, and that thing came all the way to Earth, and it hit us dead center. No CME has ever harmed any plants or animals. What it'll do, it'll crash into the Van Allen radiation belt. It'll curve around them, split in half, and the two halves will collide on the far side, and then they cascade down. The energy does, the plasma energy will come down through the upper atmospheres and cascade over the face of the Earth. And that night, your aurora borealis will be so charged, it'll be all the way down to the equator. And you can read a newspaper by it at 3 o'clock in the morning. That was the Carrington event. The only thing you had in September of 1859 was telegraphs. And so they had to restring their wires and stomp out some small fires, and that was it. But if CME hits today, your entire power grid is 40 feet in the air, all of it. And it will burn us back into the Stone Age. I'm telling you, it's no global warming or green hoax or things you just blow off. This is just normal Mother Nature, planetary mechanics. Things happen all the time. It don't care whether you believe it or not. It's going to do it. Now, why should you be concerned other than your grid burns you back in the Stone Age? Well, buddy, once again, your audience probably knows this, but July 23rd, 2012, the Mayans were right. They were just 6 days off. Not bad for far back, what, 1,500, 2,000 years ago. They said, you guys are all going to die on 2012. Well, they just about had it right, because what happened on July 23rd, 2012, media barely said anything about it. The perfect storm of CMEs happened. There were 3 of them, actually 4, CMEs, all in a row, all heading straight for Earth. The first one, when it would hit, it would weaken the Van Allen radiation belt. And then number 3 and 4 would hit, and they are each twice the size of the Carrington event. And if all three of those things hit us on July 23rd, I would not be talking to you. There would be no communications even now. It would have taken us back to 1800s. I don't know how much fire there would be from the transformers exploding. They're filled with oil. They'll spike. Some are going to burn, fire. You got to wait to put it out, because the fire departments don't work. Pumps don't pump.
Okay, well, let me just kind of interrupt you there. Sorry about this, because I've interviewed a guy named Matt Stein he went to MIT, and he's written a book, When Technology Fails, and he's gone into all the things that'll happen in the event of a CME, also of an EMP. And I think a man-made EMP might be a little more likely than the CME side of it. But let's say there's a CME.
Well, for instance, the July 23rd event, it only passed 121,000 miles away, less than half of the distance to the moon. It passed right by us. If we had been 6 days earlier in orbit, it would have hit us dead center. Now, the point to that all is, I can tell you something with some real certainty in celestial mechanics, which I know just a little bit about, is that for something to pass that close to you in a rhythmatic system that can be mathematically projected, and it's a clear warning you're going to get hit very soon.
All right. Well, what about the notion? Okay. What about the notion that the moon has been put in place, that the moon is not what we think it is, that it's hollow, that Phobos is a command and control center, that planets can be driven like, cars basically, and that they're hollowed out and occupied by various races from other planets and so on. And I know you agree that there are races from many of the galaxies out there, and the likelihood is so high. And I don't know if you've ever met, aside from the interaction you had with what appears to possibly be a biological entity that had artificial intelligence within Area 51. But what I'm saying to you is there's intelligence out there. Some of it wants to protect the Earth, no doubt. But if Bob Dean talks to you about Nibiru, you see Nibiru may be interfering with some of our weather at this point, or maybe a planetoid, an incoming planetoid that's coming in, which there's also some other people that are reporting certain things like a Dyson sphere that might be bringing along with it a group of planets, etc. So have you heard some of these theories?
Yes, I have. I really, the Dyson sphere, man, that'd be something to see. But unfortunately, some of these, a lot of these events don't spell a very good time for us. And you better hope there's some controlling force out there, because we really should have bought it on July 23rd.
All right.
Something may have interfered and caused that, just ever so slightly slow down in orbit. It could be in a lot of ways you could manipulate things there where we just get missed.
Well, but you dealt with Rudolph, you dealt with von Braun. So you dealt with some pretty high-level Nazis in your time. You were deep in the secret space program, whether you don't seem to know it or not, I don't really know. But, or maybe just being careful about it. But, what I'm wondering is, did you ever meet any aliens, face-to-face humanoid aliens, whether they were Nordics or Anunnaki, etc.? In your travels, you met Carl Sagan, you met Isaac Asimov, you told me. You probably met all kinds of amazing, illustrious individuals. Have you met any aliens?
None that I know of, but that doesn't mean I didn't. If it's a Nordic, you wouldn't really know. I guess they didn't want you to know.
Right.
But as far as I know, I've never met an alien, and I've never seen a spaceship or an alien spacecraft. Now, what I did see was a alien power plant. And that's what I'll go into detail about.
I know, but you know what? On a psychic level, you were very brilliant, in regard to that. I don't want to spoil it for people, but the bottom line is you seem to really know where that came from. You suggested some things to the men around you at that time.
Oh, yeah.
That you weren't supposed to know. And that, I don't know if do you consider yourself psychic, or how do you think you landed on that information?
No, not really. I don't consider myself psychic, but, Einstein said something interesting about original thought. And he said, it's just like lint in the air. It floats around and just lands on you. And, no rhyme or reason. And there you have it. Somebody's brilliant. So,
all right. Well, I know one of the things it says in your bio is that you gave some equations to Stephen Hawking, right, to help him out.
Right. Actually, it's the other way around. It's parallel. In his work, he's looking for a unified theory, the string theory, what ties everything together. I'm a little bit more narrow in that area. I'm not looking for something that will answer everything. I'm just looking for one thing. I'm looking for field containment. And field containment is what all the other large physicist groups like CERN, a lot of other, Princeton, anybody involved in electromagnetic fusion containment, we're all looking for the same thing, and that is field containment.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, see, you need to understand what our power systems run, how they operate. You imagine, simply put, you detonate a nuclear chain reaction, an H-bomb, and you'll be able to contain it in a bottle.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that's a dream. Well, it's more than a dream. That's actually what we're doing. You build these electromagnetic force fields that are so powerful that they have the ability to contain an H-bomb with no problem. And don't sit there and go, "Oh, this is nonsense. There's no material could hold that, that kind of heat and pressure. There's no way you could do that." Well, yes, you can, and we've already done it. And there's something out in nature that we learned from that proves that it can be done. And that is a black hole. A black hole will move over to a sun, suck it in, and it is gone forever. Now, what is the sun? It's a continuous chain reaction of nuclear energy. So a sun is hundreds of millions of H-bombs going off continuously, simultaneously. And the force wants to blow out.
Well, what about the notion that that we live in an electric universe?
Well, actually, there's some truth to that statement. For instance, the thing that we absolutely know of as a constant positive and negative charge, it is found out through the entire universe. That means in all the galaxies, in all the solar systems, on all the planets, on all the moons, Earth, everywhere, that we have a positive and negative charge. And you find it everywhere, and it's constant. So with that, technically speaking, it's very correct. You live in an electric universe. It's everywhere. It's kind of like
all right. I have a witness called Mark Richards who worked in the secret space program as a captain for the Navy. He says that we are going interstellar and that we get our fuel from neutron stars at this time, and that's the most advanced technology out there.
It's out there. You know what a neutron star is? Man, this is mind-boggling. A neutron star is a star that's collapsed on itself. And you got to understand some interplanetary physics here to really get the gist of this, of what he just said. Imagine a star. Ours is a medium-sized star. It's a yellow star. Let's jump to a blue giant. And let's say it's 500,000 miles across its face. Imagine how much that thing weighs. Well, eventually, gravity always wins. Always. The sun will run out of its energy, like ours will one day. And that mass of exploding bombs, the force wants to blow out, and the mass of the gravity pulls it back in. And one's blowing out, one's pulling in, and they equalize each other until they're stable. And that's a normal star. Well, in the end, gravity always wins. You'll run out of fuel, gravity field will pull it in. So now let's get that 500,000 mile cross sun, and let's say it's done squeezed itself down to the size of a baseball. But now get this, it still weighs as much when it was 500,000 miles across. So imagine how heavy that baseball is. And this is fact. This is all science, physics, fact. No science fiction here. As a matter of fact, give you an example of how heavy and condensed a neutron star is. I cut out, with my magic knife, I'll cut out a sugar cube size of its mass. And I'm holding it in my hand and I drop it on the floor. It'll go through the floor, clear through Earth, then the gravity field of the Earth will pull it back, and it'll keep going until it shreds this entire Earth, like paper going through a shredder. That's how dense neutron stars are. So if you're making your fuel out of that, brother, what kind of process that would be, what the technology would be at the end of the scale. So your caller was absolutely right. Now, whether we're doing that or not, I can't say because I hadn't seen the process. But what he suggested, that we're getting our fuel from that is one heck of a implication he just said.
All right. I got another one for you. I've got a photographer named of John Leonard Walson, who's become a good friend, and he has photographed using a telescope and I don't know, some kind of, I don't know if it's those night vision goggles or what it is, how he does it, but he's photographed craft that look like light craft. Have you ever seen them? They're alongside the sun, and they're actually getting energy from the sun. Have you seen those?
No, that's strange. The only thing that ever had happen in my life was by sheer accident. And I don't know if it's the same thing he's talking about. But I was laying in a pool, a hot tub, and the sun was going down, and the sun got just behind the building. And so the building was blocking the sun, and I could see the corona of the sun. I had my sunglasses on, polarized, so I'm getting a good look at the corona. And lo and behold, I'm laying in LA, by the way, coming from the left, from the ocean, coming through into the sun's corona. You couldn't see it until it passed into the corona. And when it was in the corona with the sun blocked, I saw it perfectly. And it looked like, the best way to describe it is like a flying arrowhead. Very sleek, very aerodynamic. No sound, no noise. And when it left the sun's corona, it just became translucent again. And I thought, no, I just imagined that. And I'm sitting there going, that did not happen. And by the time I said that, a second one just a few feet lower than it come into the sun's corona, became visible. Then when it went out the corona, couldn't see it. Now, if you're trying to look at it straight on, you'd never see it because the sun would blind you. This is just perfect serendipity where I was aligned with the building, aligned with the sun, and these two crafts came in. And by the way, where they were heading in the direction of, they were heading toward Las Vegas on past the Groom Lake.
How about that?
So I'll give you that. I have no explanation. It's a functional multiple technologies. You got propulsion. You got some kind of, I don't know, some way of cloaking the dang thing, and totally silent, and moving at a normal speed of a normal sized jet. So it wasn't super fast, but then I haven't seen the other stuff. That thing could probably jump the warp drive. I wouldn't know, but I can't explain that one. But I know what I saw. I'm trained, and it wasn't birds, wasn't airplanes, normal commercial lanes. No, these two things, they were coming back home, I guess, out of the Groom Lake. But
well, there you go. Because look, I don't think that you would have gone through those experiences without, actually being affected. Now, I'm trying to give you a picture in your Skype right now. Are you able to access that file I just dropped in your Skype? And I'm going to put it on the screen as well here.
Okay.
For the people, because this is what I'm talking about. So I just want you to take a look at that and see if you can see it. And if you can't, well, I understand.
Okay, I'm not picking it up. Too bad. I'd like to see it.
All right.
What is it?
Well, it's a craft that John Walson photographed.
Okay.
It's what we're talking about. It's a picture of what we're talking about.
Did he? Wow, I'd like to see that.
So you can, if you double click, can you see a little blue square? If you double click it, you might be able to get it.
No, don't have a little blue square.
And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this on the screen for people. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not, but they will.
Okay, good.
And I can send it to you after we get off the air and everything.
Sure.
Of course,
Sure,
unfortunately, the bottom half of this picture has got a picture of his eye because they threatened him with a photo with a helicopter over his house. They're always threatening him because he takes these pictures.
That's a shame.
Yeah, and so that's what happens when you actually get good stuff.
Yeah, I noticed. They do get upset with you, and all kinds of things happens after that.
Did you have any more Men in Black show up? By the way.
No, that was one time. He handed me my draft notice. Not too many people can say my draft notice was handed to me by Men in Black. But I will tell you something that's really odd. You know the triangle watch that MIBs are supposed to have?
Yep.
These guys had triangle watches. Kid you not.
That's great.
And because I saw it. Like I said, if I hadn't seen it or touched it, I'll just speculate with the rest of you. But that I did see. I remember that. It's so unusual because you just don't see that kind of shape of a watch.
Absolutely.
And it had a black leather band, not the kind that stretches over, but one you have to fasten with a buckle.
Very cool. All right. Well, I just sent you another version of the picture just in case you can get that one. If not, it doesn't matter because we can go on with our discussion. There's some people. There's some people that want to know if you know anything about what's going on down in Antarctica. There's a lot of stuff about Antarctica lately.
Okay. I'll give you my point of view, and I try to reflect mostly mainstream science and stuff, but I'm telling you, I'll grant you this. There is something going on down there, and it's not normal. It's so weird. And elites are getting invited to go down there. And I know this for a fact. Did anybody find it odd that Buzz Aldrin was down there?
Right. And why did he say that there was something so evil down there? What do you think he was referring to?
I'm not sure, but I noticed, think about this. He has a heart attack while he's there.
Right.
So I would suggest maybe it's something that he saw.
Right.
But for him to be there, it's very odd. And then there's been some big name people, but it looks like they're inviting the elite to come. But I do know of a few friends of mine that got invited. And they asked me if they should go. Is there something to it? And I said, yeah, apparently check and see that people went down there and make sure they come back. If they're back and they seem normal, I'd go for it. Yeah, go down there and see if you get a chance to be offered, go take a look. I think I've heard some theories. I don't know what it is. I think it's some form where it's absolute, proof positive. Some advanced civilization, ancient, that was here before us, and they found them. And the way they're carrying on with it really makes you wonder if the people aren't still alive and well, meaning the inhabitants of the advanced civilization. The thing was discovered by accident. You know that. It because of the climate change and the melting of both poles, the ice had melted so much there that one of our observational satellites for the Navy picked up on it. And it showed a big dark triangle image under the ice, which later we find out is to be a pyramid. So it really wasn't planned by anybody. Mother Nature did it when she melted the ice back. Prior to that thing could never be seen from orbit or on the ground or anywhere. But when they saw that and they started moving in on it, and then all of a sudden the flurry activity, and then everything went dead quiet. And from my own personal experience with operations, that's a sure sign that contact, bingo, whatever it is, it's there. You make contact with it, and then you just shut down all communications, which is what they did.
Well,
there's something down there. What? I don't know.
Well,
but it's serious.
Come on, you knew all these Nazis. We are told there's a Nazi base down there called New Berlin. Have you ever heard that?
No, I haven't, but maybe they found it. Whatever it is, it's serious, and there's national security involved in it now. So yeah, we may never know what's down there, but don't think people are kooks thinking that there's something down there, because from all the indications I've seen, yeah, there's some activity. There's enough smoke down there. There's a fire of some kind. I just don't know what it is, but sure it's intriguing, though. Some people think it's Atlantis. Could be.
Well, it's possible that Atlantis is not exactly what people think it is.
That's true, too. Because none of us was around when that thing was apparently active. So, yeah, I don't know what it is. There's another thing that you mentioned earlier about the moon being hollow. And once again, that's not a folklore or a urban myth. It's a scientific fact that the moon is hollow, and is actually attested to by no other than NASA itself. And you know how they verified it, right? How that happened?
The atomic bomb?
No. When all the we have 6 lunar landing sites on there. We've been to the moon 7 times, landed 6 times, 13 went around. And at each landing site, you'll see astronauts setting out instrument packages. Now, in these packages, there are different devices. There's the one that can measure solar wind. Another one can measure micrometeors. Another one is a seismograph. There's a laser reflector base. That's a really cool thing. For those of you who think we did not go to the moon, I'd like to suggest that you go online and look up one of the planetariums. There's several of them involved. And the one in California will invite you over to watch it. And what they do is they fire a laser from the observatory to the moon. It hits these mirrors that are built like little triangles, and they ricochet the beam straight back from the same source it originated from. And the observatory takes measurements regularly, daily, between the Earth and the moon. And that's how we get a lot of data about what we need to know about on a cosmology level. So if we didn't go to the moon, how come we have those mirrors up there on the moon? Where did they come from? The astronauts put them there, and that's what we shoot at. And they'll be glad for you to come over to the observatory, and they'll let you watch them fire the laser to the moon and have it come back.
Fair enough. Well, they also seem to cover something up because, I guess you're in touch with Jay Widener, and I told you that he is the person who's like an expert on Stanley Kramer, and his basically having faked the moon landings, filmed them so that they could cover up some of the things they found on the moon that they could not put on film.
Well, how did we get those mirrors on the moon then?
Oh, well, no, I'm saying both things happened. In other words, yeah. I'm saying we definitely went there. In fact, we've got a base there now.
Well, that's another thing. It's got my interest because I look at it maybe a little differently than most people. The thing I want to know is why would somebody like Christopher Columbus would go to America, see it, come back home, and burn all 3 of his ships? That wouldn't even make sense. And yet, that's exactly what we did. We were up in space, and then we burned our manned space program not once, but twice within a quarter of a decade, century, and even taking torches and cut the pads down at the Cape. Pad 39A and B, it's just 2 slabs of concrete. All the launch vehicle towers, everything's gone. Yeah. So they want to make sure we don't go back. And my question is this.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Stanley Kramer, Stanley Kubrick. Sorry, got the name wrong there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that was the right name. Kubrick is the one that did 2001. and
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Wrong guy.
It might have been Kramer versus Kramer. But anyway, there's just one simple question I just want to know is, why do we not want to go back to the moon? And I mean, they don't want to go. They are doing everything they can, and I'm talking about NASA.
Well, that's the cover story, as far as I'm concerned. Now, according to William Tompkins, and I know you haven't seen my interview with him, but he is saying basically that when we went there, the reptilians were there to greet us and basically said for us to take a look around and then get the hell off. And it was Curtis LeMay, if I remember correctly, that William Tompkins said is the reason, actually, that Mark Richards also said, that we ended up with bases on the moon and probably on Mars as well. But definitely the base on the moon is there because Curtis LeMay would not take no for an answer, if I recall.
Yeah, he didn't take no too well. I'll tell you that personally. I don't know. There is some kind of resistance that does not want us to go back to the moon. And which brings me up to another idea, suggestion. I think what we should do, back in the early 60s, we launched probes to the moon that took pictures. Just rapid pictures, snap, 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 all the way to impact. And then we were called Lunar Explorer and Lunar Ranger. And they helped us decide what landing sites we wanted to go for Apollo. And then when we got to Apollo 8 with Frank Bowman going around the moon, that's when we really, with his photographs, we really decided where we're going to land. But I would like to do something different, and it would work. So I was on a program, and I think it was Coast to Coast, can't remember. But anyway, one of these programs, I said, I'm getting an awful lot of emails from people who used to work in the space program, and some of them are still current. And all of these guys are, rocket engineers, just good old plain rocket propulsion people. And when they heard my suggestion, they offered to come and work for almost free, just minimum wage, because they want to really do what I suggested. My suggestion is that you get somebody like a 1 percenter, got billions, don't know what to do with. For less than $1 billion, you can get yourself some off-the-shelf hardware, because we did this back in 1960s, and build a rocket, put our new high-definition cameras on it, launch it from Sea Launch. That is a huge floating platform, about bigger than Deepwater Horizon. And you launch rockets at the equator. You get the full centrifugal force of the Earth's rotation. So it costs a whole lot less to get it up in orbit. That's why Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center is right down in Florida on that cape. It's close we can get in a big facility to the equator. That's where you want to get, so you can use the Earth's rotation.
All right. Well, what about SpaceX and Elon Musk? You're familiar with his efforts?
Right. Well, yeah, he's not going to do what I want to do.
Why not?
Because my proposal is you get these rockets built, you launch them off the Sea Launch. They go out in orbit. When they head to the moon, you pick out 10 or 11 targets. The 10 targets I picked came off of a video called Moon Bases. I watched that thing, and I first, was skeptical, and I'm looking at it. But I'll give you this. There are things on the moon I saw in that film. I just don't know what they are, and I think they do warrant a very close look. So your 10 targets come off of that film. And, like the chimney, the arch, there were several other things they had.
Oh, yeah.
And so you take these, just like the Lunar Explorer and Ranger did, these cameras come flying in, and you direct them with our navigation of today. We'll go right in and drop a camera literally right on top of this structure, taking pictures. If the thing's got door handles, we'll see them. So I'd like to see what's up there. And then I suggested why we don't go back to the moon. Do you know, over the course of 40, 50 years, we've been shooting stuff at the moon and landing there. The Apollo astronauts themselves left 96 bags of feces up there. We left 400,000 tons of crap on the moon. Spent rockets, packages, just, cameras. It comes up. They have a complete inventory. I have the list. It's online. 400,000 tons of crap we have dropped on the moon. So I submit this to you. You shoot one of those probes I'm talking about to go to the chimney or the arch, and about the third probe we send up there, some little creature walks out with a shoulder-fired weapon and blow our probe clear out of the sky. Well, at that moment, we will know for sure somebody's there, and they're pissed off that we're shooting stuff at them. And I suggest what they told everybody back in the Apollo program, if all this is going to follow that train of thought, that they told us, get the heck off the moon, don't ever come back, and stop littering our yard. I mean, how if I came to your house and dropped 400,000 tons of crap and waste onto your property, you're not going to be too happy with me.
Well, so it depends what they're doing up there in the first place and what kind of crap they're creating, I would have to say.
I mean, it may be we build too much out of this, too much conspiracy, too much interplanetary stuff, intergalactic galaxies, all that. How about just somebody actually owns the moon, flew the thing here, parked it here when we were still primates, and actually it was a lot earlier than that. There's some Native American things I've researched that mentions the sky without a moon.
Right.
So anyway, the moon comes in, it parks itself, which that I can explain to you on a blackboard in math. That's not possible because the moon and the Earth, look at the size of them. Look at the two moons of Mars, Deimos and Phobos. They're small, just baseball things looking next to the Mars. Our moon is way too big for the Earth to capture. It just can't be done. I did the math. It can't be done. And it parks itself so perfectly, it makes a total lunar and solar eclipse.
Right.
I mean, the odds of that thing doing that precisely is just astronomical.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's probably an artificial device. We know it's hollow because we fired the upper stage of the lunar lander back into the moon when the astronauts crawled back into the command module to go home. And what did we leave there? Seismographs. So when that top half of the lunar lander smashed into the moon, it resonated for hours. And then one test that they did, they put rockets on the upper stage, drive it in harder, more impact. The moon resonated like a bell for 3 days on the seismographs. So it's absolutely hollow. So what's going on there? That doesn't make sense. So much stuff about the moon doesn't make sense.
All right.
And yet all you want to hear is go to Mars, make movies about going to Mars. Hell with Mars, 42 million miles one way. And my God, the moon is only 240,000 miles away, and we don't know what's up there.
Okay, let me throw something else at you. What about artificial intelligence, quantum computers, and a company called D-Wave? Geordie Rose, have you heard of him?
No, I haven't, but that's probably because it's a little bit out of my area. However, I do know something about AI, and you ever heard of a pear, like the fruit? You ever heard of Pear Research? Pear Research is a private company that operates in Princeton. And they're one of the primary people that are doing the interface between a pilot and a jet aircraft. Remember the movie with Clint Eastwood, Firefox?
Yeah.
All you do was think, had thinking Russian, but the plane would respond. Well, that's exactly what this company does. So they found out some things. The pilots, if they have a very difficult time with the wife, arguing and stuff when they come into work, it affects how the aircraft reacts to the pilot. So they have to do a lot of psychological screening. Anyway, what they're moving into is metamorphosis. It's where you're going to have a symbiotic system. That's where you have two independent living organisms that are actually fusing themselves to a level where they can interact as one unit. And
okay, well, I'll give you a piece of information. They said that they were in operation for 28 years, and the pair lab closed, ending decades of what they called psychic research. Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research is what it stood for. It is strange that they closed it, especially if they were making some progress. But usually when something closes, in my opinion, it goes black.
Yeah, that's what happened. I can tell you right now, it's not closed. It's alive and healthy. And it's moved on into your military triad of the military, government, and commercial applications. They did not abandon that project at all. And it's leading to other things. And the reason that's important and relative to me is because I saw something that is the ultimate form of symbiotic relationships. So I wonder where these people got the idea.
You sure as hell did. Back in, when you were 17 years old, you saw the ultimate in that, and no doubt about it. You also saw some, I think you said teardrop shaped craft that you just kind of were cruising by. There are people that say they see teardrop shaped craft.
Right. These weren't flying. They were in a hangar bay that we drove by, and we're moving along pretty quick in this golf cart looking thing.
Right.
But the doors were open wide enough where I could get a good 3, 4, 6 second look at it. And these crafts were sitting there, and it had a triangle gear. So it meaning that there were 3 wheels spread out, one under left and right sides of its body in the nose area. And there were power cables hooked to it. There were NC8 units, that's power units that supplies power to aircraft and jets. You see them hook up to them all the time. There was air conditioner units hooked to it. So that means there's people inside that thing. And the biggest indicator, drip pans underneath it, which catch it drips. So
that's old technology, in other words.
Well, yeah, but even under your super cutting edge technology, the damn thing gets a leak. You need a drip pan. So anyhow, the point is, it's operating. It's not a model. It's not it's not just a static design model. This thing's a functioning, flying prototype of some kind or something. So I still remember how they look.
Now somebody, I've got people in the chat, and they're asking questions. I am inviting them to ask questions, and I'm not going to keep you for that much longer, because I know we've been doing this for a while, David, and you've been a great guest and a great sport. As far as D-Wave goes, some people think it may be causing what's called by some Mandela effect. Have you heard about the Mandela effect?
No, I'm afraid I'm going to look stupid on this one. I haven't a clue what any of that is.
All right. Well, it's something that people on the internet have been noticing. It's very interesting. There are some anomalous situations going on around the planet. It started when people, I guess Nelson Mandela is thought to have died by some people and others not at different dates. And there are certain things in movies that everyone remembers a certain way that have now changed, and no one changed the original film. No one could have changed it, and yet they're not the same. It's a whole story. You can go on the internet and watch the videos and learn all the different incidents. I don't have time to go into it. It indicates that CERN or someone or something is altering our timelines.
I'll tell you what, dating all the way back with our favorite friend, Nikolai Tesla, when he started phase shifting for the Navy, the ships, so they could be invisible on the horizon, and all that's true. He told them how to wrap the ship in the coils on a certain way to do it. And he warned them clearly, do not overpower this thing, because what will happen, you'll pass the phase shifting, which what you just want to move to the right in the light spectrum so that the ship no longer blocks white light and you can see it. If it doesn't block white light, then it goes transparent. You can't see it. And he said that's a very fine line. If you overpower it, he said you will stop doing a phase shifting of something physical, and you'll move on into a time phase shifting, which is, he's warned me that it's way over yours head and mine, and if you do that, you're going to have some real problems. And obviously, we remember the story of the Philadelphia experiment.
Right.
He warned against that. So that type of technology, there's some real sound science behind it. And
well, haven't you been invited or asked to work for CERN?
Yes, I was asked once, and I told him I don't do well with bosses. Not that I'm not a team player, it's just that type of physics I'm really not interested in. Although,
but some people think that they're screwing with the timeline.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say in the very beginning. That, I'm telling you, that is an area that you really need to be careful with, because you can cause accidents, and these accidents can be very extensive and not contained at all. But one good thing about direct time travel, if you screw it up, and once again, it's in theory, but in theory, the only thing that should be noticed or harmed is you. Time travel mistakes are very personal, and because it needs your point of view in the timeline. Hopefully, I hope those theories hold true, because I'm afraid there's idiots out there working in that area, and they're like children playing with a loaded gun. They're not taking their time. They're not thinking through stuff, and they just, throw the switch and let's see what happens type attitude. And that's not smart in this kind of stuff, because you can affect the entire world with it. So,
well, I guess that's what people are saying has happened. That's what that I do have some other evidence of that. There is evidence coming up out all the time nowadays that our timelines may be shifting. Some people may have actually shifted onto a slightly different time. It may be, I don't know if you ever heard of a wingmakers.com. It's a sort of an occult website where a guy who worked for Black Projects, he wrote and disclosed a bunch of information. I interviewed the creator of that at one time, and that was all about moving the Earth to go interdimensional at a time when a certain race of beings that were diabolical in nature, and I think artificial intelligence, are headed our way, so that when they came by our galaxy, they wouldn't see the Earth. Have you ever heard of that technology? Some people call it blank slate technology. Yes, I'm familiar with that. Yeah, that's, it's possible in that type of research. There's the whole time and space continuum is just an interesting arena, and we know so little bit about it. We're just infants in that area. Phase 4 of my engine would get us to a point where we would have interstellar travel. And I don't know if you saw the movie Interstellar, but that's one of the first times somebody did an excellent job of showing you that time travel is a bitch. The side effects are horrible. For every 5 minutes you're on maybe a planet's surface, 10 years is passing on Earth. So by the time you get home, everybody you know is dead. Star Trek, how do they communicate and navigate? They're outrunning the speed of light. They're outrunning their own headlights. So how did they do that? They never address that issue because it's out of our envelope of technology. Back to my engine. You remember my force fields that's holding the plasma inside the cyclotrons, the spheres in the chamber. Now it's very hot in this plasma stream. It's 50 million degrees centigrade is the temperature of my engine. Now people go, wait a minute, nothing can withstand that
power. Yes, it can. The force fields can. The force fields are acting as an artificial black hole. They're not going to suck the Earth in because they're already in a figure-8 pattern. What's figure-8 sideways in math? Infinity. So it's chasing infinity. It's never going to get out of the infinity loop. So once those fields are sustained on the engine, your power plant, then you extend the fields outside the spacecraft. Then the spacecraft does something very cool. Let's say you want to go to Andromeda Galaxy. Well, now we're facing a problem and a riddle that Einstein once asked. He said, how do you go millions of times faster than the speed of light without breaking the speed of light and remain constant in Newtonian laws? Well, I figured that out. And I figured that out back in 1971 when I built my electromagnetic fusion containment engine. And the way it operates is that everybody thinks the fastest way to get somewhere is a straight line. Well, that's linear distance. That's in a three-dimensional plane on linear distance, and that's it. Well, no, that's not it. There's a whole nother way of going at it. You turn on my secondary fields, and then space is like a fabric. It will wrap around the spacecraft like a burrito. And it's pulling the point you want to get to you. Let's say it's Andromeda Galaxy.
Sure.
Once it's wrapped around in your craft, then the craft moves forward at half light speed. And it's only going through, imagine if you take a burrito, it's really long, you roll it up tight, you squeeze it, and you look at the edge. That edge is the distance, the actual linear distance you're going to travel, which is not much. So in about 2 minutes your time, you turn your engines off or turn your secondary fields off. And when space unrolls itself, you're setting over an Andromeda Galaxy, and you've gotten there in 2 minutes, and you went millions of times faster than the speed of light, but you didn't go faster than the speed of light. So,
right. So isn't that calling bending the space-time, right?
Yeah, it's bending space-time, but it's doing it with what the twist is, you have control of this, so you can come back. So what you have is the ability to travel anywhere you want to within your time span of your life, 70, 80 years, and you're not breaking the speed of light, and you're staying within the interstellar laws. It's just a way of, with my engine, the math, the algorithms, and all the extraneous other things that go with it, the Mobius, all this stuff come together, and that's how we come up with where we could use this form of energy for stellar travel. And meanwhile, back on Earth, all your power needs to be met by this.
Okay, but let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to build a craft, put the engine in it, and get off the planet?
Yeah, well, I retired. I did well, but I didn't do that well. It would take, I need a 1%er to join in. And then, yeah, I could build some interesting stuff like that. You know, I'm having a hard enough time. I've tried twice now to give my fusion containment material over, and have met with hard resistance both times. So this time, the way I'm going to do it is I figured out how to give everybody fusion containment that everybody's been after, and they hadn't been able to get to it yet, which I don't understand why that is. The official word from the fusion containment community as of last year, when I asked them, when you're going to get containment, and they said, we'll get it with $80 billion more in 40 more years. And I'm going, 40. That's an interesting number of years, kind of biblical. It shows up a lot in the Bible. But it also shows up in something else, a career. They want grants for 40 years so they can work, leisure, do whatever they want. They don't give a damn if they ever get there or not. And they'll retire out. That's what has been going on. That's why you don't have fusion containment. Your community is in no hurry to really do it. And they've been dragging their feet. I know I cannot possibly be the only person that 45 years ago I came up with ways solving the problem of fusion containment.
Well, I mean, aren't you talking about the oil industry, the energy industry, and the fact that they are stopping this getting to the public and all of that?
Well, I'll just use myself as an example. I've been offered a lot of money for the licensing of this stuff. And the only problem is with the license or any other money offering, control. People want control of this technology. And this technology is not really meant for just one country to have or one company, and then they just dole it out as they feel and make money with it. This is something everybody on Earth needs all at once, at the same time. Now, I did this back in 1971. I blew up my original prototype. However, all the stuff that you need to complete the thing, rebuild it in my head, and now it's no longer in my head. I have it out somewhere else. And we didn't have...
And that's your get out of jail free card, right?
Yeah, well, it goes like this. Upon my death, on open end source World Wide Web, the material will be dumped onto the web. It goes to everybody. Yeah, that means Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. Yeah, they all get it. Just like United States, England, Italy. Everybody gets it at the same time. And you'll be able to replicate it because it's not just the formulas, it's the instruction sheet. But thanks to Mark McCandless, you will have schematics and blueprints. And thanks to another guy in California in 3D manufacturing, I will leave you a fully scaled, correctly engineered prototype model of the alien engine in mine with the drawings, the blueprints, and all the math. And anybody can replicate it. And you want them to do it for two reasons. One, the minute some lab builds it, gets the same results I did, the technology is validated. No more arguments. Second, you'll want everybody to do it because if you have a house you're trying to clean, it's filled with smoke, smog, and pollution, you get the kitchen all cleaned up, but the bedrooms and the bathrooms are horrible. Well, you want them to use the same thing so you get your house cleaned up. That's why everybody gets the technology all at once. So everybody uses it, and who doesn't want to use it? The fusion containment system is a nuclear power plant that in a nuclear power system you have not met. You've met the evil twin, fission and conventional fusion. Both leave radioactive waste. They both have can be a meltdown. You can make nuclear weapon warhead fuel with it. Just a lot of nasty problems. With my system, no waste, none, because I don't have big pile rods. I just use 2 baby-sized peas of fuel. And the fuel, basic fuel, deuterium, seawater out of the oceans. You think you got enough fuel? So this also system will allow clean thermal fusion power. When it runs and you shut off the reactor, you can walk in the reactor in a shirt because there's zero radiation. Remember, they're running at 50 million degrees centigrade, 10,000 times hotter than the corona of the sun, and there's nothing left. It's total clean. And you know all that nasty fuel that you got piled up in Yucca Mountain wherever they moved it? You take all that nasty stuff, build one of my power plants next to it so you don't have to transport it, feed it into the nuclear power plant, it will eat it and no radiation. You clean up all the old radioactive waste and get free energy out.
Well, they could sure use you over at Fukushima, apparently.
Yeah, I've been watching that for a while. You know, that thing still is hot and active as it was the last day we saw it on TV. If nothing's changed, it's still burning over there. You got 4 Chernobyls running.
That's right.
And nobody wants to talk about that. Your Pacific Ocean is slowly being totally polluted. You cannot eat yellowfin tuna anymore in the Pacific Ocean. It's all contaminated. Those things are radioactive.
Right.
They had, I guess, their little livers and stuff actually hung on to the radioactivity. It's too bad. I mean, and Japanese got that. Boy, Anybody heard of anything called the Cove? Yeah, now turn the tables on you. The Cove. Have you heard of it?
I think I have.
Yeah, dolphins.
Yeah.
Where the Japanese had this big cove, and you couldn't get to it by car. You'd have to get a boat and ride around into it. But people would occasionally see a wounded dolphin go by where its side was split open. Well, what they do over at the Cove, they draw in dolphins by the thousands, and they kill millions of dolphins a year at this cove, and they just haul them out of there. And the reason they're doing it said, oh, it's eating their fish and their competitor. You know why Japan got Fukushima? What took out the 4 power plants? The ocean. I think Neptune had enough, and he just decided to level the playing field for the dolphins, and he just took out 4 nuclear power plants and literally crippled forever Japan right now.
Well, from what I understand, that was man-made and it was payback, but it was also something to geoengineer the atmosphere of the planet and to make it more conducive to certain races that want to change and terraform our Earth. And it's also to create what is in essence X-Men. Human beings that are mutants that can have special powers, etc. When you get a lot of radiation on pregnant women and babies, then you get mutations, and they're trying to change the human genome.
I just saw Wolverine die at the movies, and I was bummed out about that.
That was awesome, wasn't? I love that show. That was an amazing movie.
Hugh Jackman was so good at it. But it's tough seeing Wolverine die. I have to admit, it's like watching Spock die. I read those comics when I was a child, so even though I knew he died in the comics, it's still tough seeing it right in front of you. But yeah, well, I hope so. But I think Fukushima happened because of man's stupidity and arrogance, and maybe what you say makes a lot of truth. What normal thinking person, I mean, all your listeners out there, you're not nuclear physicists, you're not world leaders all over, but you're sitting there going, well, what idiot would put 4 nuclear power plants on the beach? I mean, really, the ocean right there. How stupid can you be? Yeah. And I mean, God, did anybody look at the plans? And it was just inevitable. It was going to happen, and it did. But I'll go along with you. Somebody planned that, because no normal thinking science person is going to put 4 nuclear reactors on a beach.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid in Southern California we have some similar problems as well.
You do. Yes, you do.
So listen, David, you are such a joy to talk to. We could go on all night, but I'm not going to do it. I want to encourage people to come down on the 24th through the 26th and see you at the conference. Okay.
Sure.
And I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and being my guest. And I know that you have a lot more to share. We could just be talking on all kinds of subjects. There's certain things I didn't get to. I'm going to try to interview you in person as well after the conference. So we're going to arrange that. So thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, David, again for being on the show. And everyone, tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I have John D'Souza. He's also speaking at the conference. He's an ex-FBI agent investigator who's been investigating UFOs and what's really going on interdimensionally. And he's written a couple books, so he's going to be fascinating tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Listen, David, you want to say a few parting words to the audience?
Yeah, I'd recommend that don't believe everything that you see in news, but you guys already know that. But there's really, think of this. I'm so science-oriented, you think I have more of a philosophical view in life rather than pragmatic, is that of all the things I've discovered through all the travels and all the people, all the countries, world leaders, stuff I met, one universal thing I found in common, you know what? We're all very much the same. You have families and Soviets and You have aunts and uncles in China. I mean, it's the same family structure throughout the entire planet. And we're all traveling on this little blue ball out in space. And you know what? There's nowhere else to go right now. And maybe you do have an alternate space program that has capability. Right now, the way things look, no, we're just stuck here. So all we got is each other and this little blue ball. And man, I think you should lighten up. Next time you start to get mad at somebody or something, just think about it. We're all of the same family. We're in the same home, and we're all stuck together, and there's nowhere to go. So you need to get along with each other and work things out and stop being so damn closed-minded about so many things.
Thank you. So, well, that's great to hear. I also want to say to people that don't know this, and they're going to hear this when you do your presentation, I hope, and understand it. But the bottom line is that this man is an extremely courageous man who made a split-second decision when he was 17 years old to try to save the planet. And there are very few humans that can say that they did such a brave and incredible thing and a very selfless act. So people that think they know David Adair don't really know him. He's a really extraordinarily courageous person. And I just want to say thank you for your service to humanity, David Adair.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
That's okay.
And I still think you guys are worth the effort.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you for listening, everyone, and good night.
Good night.
And then we'll be back tomorrow, like I said, at 1 o'clock. So please stay tuned. Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I'm very excited tonight to bring you David Adair. He's going to be speaking next week at the UFOCON conference, and this is kind of a preliminary update on what he's been doing, and he is a fascinating man. Many people will know his name. Some people may be unfamiliar. And I'm going to read a short bio here while I get him on the screen for you. And hold on there with me for a moment. So basically, David Adair is an internationally recognized leader and expert in the field of technology spin-off applications for industry and commercial use. He's worked as a research scientist in the areas of engineering, jet engine technology, rocket science, and nuclear physics. And at the age of 11, he built his first rocket. And it was quite extraordinary. And I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that. And then at the age of 17, he also built a rocket that was called an electromagnetic fusion containment engine. And it was the first of its kind. And he says it was launched on June 20th, 1971 from White Sands Missile Proving Grounds. And he was awarded the most outstanding in the field of engineering sciences from the United States Air Force. So I've had a long discussion with David. David, you want to say hello to everyone? I'm going to unmute you here, and I hope this is working. Yeah, go right ahead and say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, and it's great to have you on the show. We're going to do a quick test for sound to make sure that everything's okay with the audience. I have a live audience, by the way, so so they can give us feedback in the chat.
Excellent.
And so if we do have any problems with sound, we're going to know because they're going to tell us.
Okay.
But you sound great at my end, and it looks like we're getting some clear feedback on the sound. That's great on your end as well. So I know you've worked in and out of the military and in and out of various aerospace companies over the years, and you've got quite an incredible resume that actually I haven't even grazed the surface of it there. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you started out as a kid, how you came under the notice of, I guess it was Dr. Rudolph, if I recall,
Yeah.
and jump off. We'll jump off from there.
Oh God. So gee whiz, where to start? At the beginning, I was young. I don't know. I just seemed to come in with stuff, I guess. I was a member of the local library. The librarian would watch me, and when I'd come in, I'd go to this certain corner, and in that corner, they were all very heavy sciences and mathematics books. And she knows I'd spend hours over there. And she came over and would talk and then ask what I was reading, what I was studying. And she watched me for months, and then she asked me something about quantum differential mechanics and what she'd done. She'd read some of it, and she asked me some questions, and I had answered them. And I was about 7 years old at the time, and she was really, I guess, taken back that I actually knew this stuff. So she asked me, did I have a hard time reading the books, understand them? And I told her I've read the entire corner. And she said, all of them? I said, yeah. So she then started ordering books for me. And this is back there. This is about 1961. So she ordered books for me, and she told me not to tell anybody because limited resources. But she was helping out a lot, and I got books that I'd never had a chance to see. So I read up on all that, and so I was just interested in so many things, but physics was really my favorite. And I started working on rockets, and for some reason I just was interested by all the different things you can learn in rocketry. So I started building rockets, and my rockets were not kits off of a shelf. There were none at the time when I did this. So I had to build everything from scratch, and I didn't want to build solid fuel rockets. They have limited power and range and a lot of other things. And the route to go is liquid fuel. There's only really two rocket engines in the world right now, solid propellant and liquid fuel. So I was able to build liquid fuel rockets. Boy, we're going to jump around so much stuff here. How could a kid have an opportunity to build, a liquid fuel rocket is a cryogenic engine. You're dealing with temperatures 320 to 325 degrees below zero. You have to have special containers, special equipment to house that kind of stuff, like liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, liquid hydrogen, all that stuff. So it's cryogenic fuels. Ordinarily, nobody would have access to this stuff, but I'm skipping a big part. My dad was a coal miner in West Virginia. I was born in Welch, West Virginia. There, right next to us was Coalwood, West Virginia. And a guy named Homer Hickman was born there. And they did a movie on him called October Sky. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Oh, I didn't. I love that movie.
Yeah, well, we were born 3 miles from each other. And I was born in Welch, which is where the science fair was, if you remember the movie.
Yes.
So anyway, now he's 11 or 12 years older than me. And so we was right into it. So Dad had his garage, and his best customers would come in at 3 or 4 in the morning. And I remember I was just really small, a toddler, and I remember my parents hanging blankets over the windows so you couldn't see the lights on at night in the garage. And the reason why, these cars would come in and they had tanks, 200-gallon tanks in the trunk. It's not gasoline. They're moonshine runners. And these moon runners have to have really highly tuned cars to outrun the revenuers who are looking for garage lights at 3 in the morning. So that's where these cars are getting tuned up. These cars have huge engines, 396 Chrysler Hemi engines. They didn't have the 426 at that time. 392 Hemi engine by DeSoto. And my father tuned them up, and these things could run so fast. And if you didn't know this, the drivers, the moonshine drivers, later got into a business, and most of the NASCAR drivers were these moon runners because they could drive so fast on curvy roads. And that's how NASCAR got started. So anyway, my dad was fixing this. This man came through. His car broke down. Had to change a carburetor. Very complicated. Take a day to do it. It's called a Spicer. Carburetor had the water jacket around it. But anyway, this man said, that's going to take all day. And Dad said, I can do it in an hour. And he said, let's see. And he stood there and watched my dad change this thing in an hour. Really? He said, you always work this fast? And he didn't get the joke when my dad said, yeah, when I see what I'm doing, it's noontime. Anyway, he got done, and the man said, I'm coming from Detroit, and I'm on my way to Florida, and we're going to race down there on the beach at a town called Daytona. And I'd like to hire you as my mechanic. And he sticks out his hand because my name is Lee Petty. Well, he had a son later named Richard Petty. And if you know those names, they are the most decorated NASCAR drivers in history.
Okay. But
so okay, so
I guess I'm kind of lost. Okay, so how does this relate to, maybe we could skip ahead a little bit?
Think about it. Those are state-of-the-art NASCAR shops that we're in, my dad's in. I agree, it must be something in the water back at that place. Because both of us did rocketry to get out of there. He got a scholarship and went to academia and private aerospace companies. I ended up into the military, and I went that route. And so we both kind of.
But you were actually sort of kidnapped or something, weren't you, to get into the military?
Yeah. There's so much things that it took. In 1996, it took Art Bell from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning, 7 hours on the radio to get the story out there. Just so much detail, and it flows just like a movie because it's life. I lived this thing. There's a lot of characters involved, a lot of stuff. For instance, and it all layered on top of each other because once you hear one section, we move to the next, you'll see what all the stuff I did in the first section being applied into the second, and it goes on down the line like that. It's all connected because it's chronological in sequence, like our timeline is, and of life, and just lived it. Back to my dad with, he was a coal miner, but he was super gifted in auto mechanics. So my grandfather, which that movie October Sky, if you remember, there was an old man in a suit standing behind Homer's father, and they referred to him as the mine superintendent. That is my mother's father. That's my grandfather.
Okay.
So I'm that close into the story. So my grandfather didn't want, my mother's father didn't want possibility that his grandkid's father, my dad, would be killed in a mine. So he got a gas station that my dad could take over. And it was a real success from the first day. A lot of customers. Dad could just fix cars and they stayed fixed. But I remember, this is leading up, I'm answering your question of how could I work with cryogenic fluids. So bear with me here and you'll see how this thing flows.